Hello, I'd like to formally announce my casting as Pepper Ann in the live-action adaptation of Pepper Ann. In all seriousness though, hi. I don't normally wear my hair in ponytails and I have this little dangly bit here, but I am very, very excited about the video that I'm going to be doing. I didn't do my opening. What is up guys? I'm Envy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be discussing how an Ulta Beauty employee feels about the entire lifespan of Becca and talking way too much. So if that is something that you're interested in, keep on watching. For this video, I am heavily inspired by Hyram's The Truth About series. In this series, Hyram takes a brand and kind of examines the history of the brand, their values and practices as a company, as well as taking some of their popular products and dissecting the formulas of those products. And this is a very bland oversimplification of this series because having made kind of like a pseudo one myself, I can't oversimplify how much work and effort he puts into these videos. But where he looks at it from, you know, a skincare enthusiast into a brand owner, partner, line guy, I'm terrible at this. I do it from someone who has been in the makeup industry for a couple years. So yeah, let's get right into this. So now that all that's out of the way, Becca Cosmetics. Becca Cosmetics, as of the time of recording and I believe posting, has not shut down, but they will be shutting down on September 30th, 2021. And also, at the time that I wrote this script, not a whole lot was known. So I'm gonna try and take this as like a story where I talk about like the history and then, you know, a little bit of like the formulas and ingredients as like the end of the story, and then like the epilogue with what we all thought was gonna happen, because of course it does, because nothing can ever just die. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here, so there we go. Becca began in Perth, Australia, and was co-founded by Rebecca Morris-Williams and Steven Shapira. Morris-Williams wanted the brand to be more skin-focused, so she created a foundation line with 34 shades, which in the early aughts was a very big deal in the beauty community. Elizabeth Reeves was brought on as head makeup artist, and having a woman of color in such a high position at the very beginning of the brand showed that Becca was willing to put their money where their mouth was in terms of inclusivity. Becca was committed to not only filling gaps in the market, but to employ those the beauty community at the time did not find profitable. Cut to 2016, Morris-Williams and Shapira have officially left Becca as it is sold to Estee Lauder, but there is speculation that the pair only owned about 30% of the company as far back as 2011. So that's a little bit of the history of the ownership of Becca up until 2016, but let's take a step back. When one thinks of Becca, typically the first products that come to mind are their primers or pressed highlighters. However, their pressed highlighters didn't come out until 2013, and their cult favorite Evermatte, I believe, poreless primer didn't come out until 2014, which happened to be the same year a very famous makeup artist or makeup enthusiast, makeup beauty guru, yes, by the name of Jaclyn Hill first used the pressed highlighter Opal on her YouTube channel. The use of this product on Jaclyn Hill's YouTube channel caused a noticeable spike in sales in Opal, as well as other highlighters, but not nearly as much as Opal, which is rumored to have tripled in sales that year. This opened the door between Jaclyn Hill and Becca for a collaboration, and the next year, 2015, the product that would go on to forever change and shape how business is done in the beauty industry, Champagne Pop, was born. Without going too deep into the buildup and the hype for the collaboration, just know that this collaboration paved the way for beauty influencer marketing in the industry as we know it. Sephora reported that 1,000 units per minute were sold, and in 4 days of being on the market, $4 million in revenue was generated from this product alone. The subsequent holiday re-release of Champagne Pop also brought Pearl in as a limited edition shade, which both shades ended up becoming permanent, which kind of sparked the what's really limited edition argument in the beauty community, as FOMO, fear of missing out, was very heavily used to sell both of these products and has kind of become an issue, for lack of better words, a conversational piece. I don't want to say controversy because that's a little too much, but it's become an annoyance. How about that? It's kind of become an annoyance in the beauty industry. But overall, even that controversy seemed to spike sales because while some were upset that they had bought backups of these products, others were so happy that the products that they weren't able to get, they could get at any time. The next collaboration between Jaclyn Hill and Becca ended up birthing, for lack of better words, the Becca and Jaclyn Hill face palette, which I am desperately trying to finish, and an eyeshadow palette, which would later go on to be one of Jaclyn Hill's first scandals, although I use scandals kind of lightly as Becca went on to take the brunt of the blame from consumers. But even the negative reviews from influencers over the eyeshadow palette didn't really dull the excitement for this next step in the collaboration between the two, which kind of leads us into the Estee Lauder takeover of 2016. After the Estee Lauder acquisition of Becca, the previously limited edition Prosecco Pop that was first and was originally only released in this face palette was brought back as permanent, which actually did bring the ire and confusion of many, including, interestingly enough, Jaclyn Hill herself, who said that her name wasn't going to be a part of it and she had no idea what was happening. I feel like I might have a lot of screenshots during this, so I'm just gonna pivot. This would kind of be the beginning of the downfall of Becca's reputation, as Jaclyn Hill's fans went hard on Becca for doing this without Jaclyn's consent, being that these were the products that she had both seemingly made, but also made so popular. Cut again to 2018, whenever Becca sends Morphe a cease and desist over the Jaclyn Hill and Becca, Jaclyn Hill and Becca? That's not right. Cut again to 2018, when Becca sends Morphe a cease and desist over the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe Vault Collection packaging, as it was similar to the holiday face palette packaging between Jaclyn Hill and Becca. Social media was ablaze with comments condemning Becca, as this was seen as out of touch on Becca's part, because obviously if two brands collaborate with the same person, the collab aesthetics are going to be very similar, as this person has an established theme, an established aesthetic, an established brand to offer. Ultimately, though, this case was settled out of court and ended up being like the least remembered controversy in regards to the Vault palettes. Later that year, Becca came under fire once again due to, I don't know how to put this with any tact, so I'm just gonna say, they photoshopped a white model skin darker for foundation swatches instead of, I don't know, paying a person of color for their time and work. Which, in case you don't remember from earlier in this video, kind of goes against the whole brand values of inclusivity and diversity. As a side note, I can't believe this was only 3 years ago. Like this feels like forever ago. Can you believe that the Vault collection, like any of this at all, was 3 years ago? I am old. Becca also collaborated with Chrissy Teigen that year, but that palette was lambasted for being similar, cough cough, repackaged Jaclyn Hill shades, and also only being one face palette as opposed to being a variety of face palette that would maybe work for a variety of, I don't know, people. Yeah, coming out with only one face palette after getting into a controversy of only hiring one model is not the best business decision that I've ever heard of. Becca also did a Chloe and Malika campaign in early 19, and all that I remember from it was working at my Ulta's event and being yelled at by an old lady. But this collab only had 2 face palettes with 2 women of color, and also went on to be one of the worst selling collections that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I think even in Becca's entire life, as I still remember like 2020 seeing on Becca's website heavily discounted Chloe and Malika collection items. But also, like, what was this? Why? Highlighter and bronzer balls? Why? Holiday 2019 was another champagne pop collection, and it included another singular face palette. I think it was a face and eye palette actually. Still, only one, don't like that. A loose and liquid highlight in the color Champagne Pop, a variation of the press in Champagne Pop, but it was sold for $1 more. Why? And a lip gloss. But this collection was seen as like especially weird because Champagne Pop is almost as synonymous with Becca as it is Jaclyn Hill. And not only was she not a part of this collection, I don't think she was even sent PR for it. This brings us to the beginning of 2020 with the laughable zero pigment foundation that was really a primer thing, and overall just the beginning of the end for Becca. I also think this was Becca's only standalone launch in 2020. They may have put out like little mini holiday trio sets for holiday in 2020, but I could be mistaken. Either way, in February 2021, Becca announced on their social media pages that they would be shutting down in the coming months, specifically September 30th, 2021. There was one more standalone launch for the brand in June 2020, and it was the High Angel pressed highlighter for Pride. Becca Cosmetics is not the first brand to close because of the Panera Bread, and it won't be the last. Clarisonic actually closed last year, if anyone remembers that, and I do have my suspicions on other brands that will either be severely downsizing or shutting down altogether like Becca, and I'd be interested to share my opinions in another video if anyone's interested, but let's get right back into this. But something that I do find interesting is the fact that Estee Lauder is just straight up shutting the brand down instead of selling it like they did with Stila several years ago. But this is where I will end the history of the brand, because at the time of writing the script, no one has swooped in at the 11th hour to maybe save Becca, although writing this script took not that long, but I really wrote it at the worst time, and we'll find out everything in just a few short minutes, I promise. And now we're gonna move on to some of the products. Now, I originally had 3 products and formulas set apart for this, but I think I'm only gonna focus on maybe 1 or 2 now, considering that these are the products that are going to be staying, and my hardest criticism was on one of the products that will be staying, and that product is the Shimmering Skin Perfector. As previously stated, Becca's Shimmering Skin Perfectors are the products that are almost most synonymous with the brand, other than their under eye highlights. Upon looking at the ingredients list on both Sephora and Becca's websites for the Shimmering Skin Perfector, I was kind of taken aback because on Becca's own website, mica is listed as the first ingredient and talc as the second ingredient, whereas on Sephora's website, talc is listed as the first ingredient and mica isn't on the ingredients list at all. Ingredients lists are listed in order of percentage of those ingredients in the product, with a good rule of thumb being that the first 5 ingredients in any product's formula making up the majority of the product. So the fact that mica is first on one and not at all on the other, it's kind of like making mac and cheese, and then on one, there's just noodles and no cheese, because it went from being the most ingredient to not at all. This is a horrible analogy, but it's not that, oh, it's just a little bit less because it's not in there at all. And it went from being the main thing to nothing. And that is just a very stark difference for me personally. Another ingredient that is on Sephora's website and ingredient list and not Becca's website is the ingredient carmine. Although that ingredient is the last ingredient on the list, so arguably an iota of it is in the product, carmine is a very controversial ingredient in regards to being considered cruelty-free. Becca proudly displays their cruelty-free status on their website, while also being open and admitting that they are not vegan or gluten-free. Carmine can be in a product and be considered cruelty-free, but it cannot be in a product and be considered vegan. So there isn't really a discrepancy there. It more or less is like there is a section of people in the cruelty-free community who don't feel that carmine is a cruelty-free ingredient because carmine is crushed beetles. Carmine is a very controversial ingredient due to mainly the sheer amount of beetles needed to produce 1 pound of dye, that being 70,000 beetles. Ultimately, that isn't like the kicker for the brand. I just thought that it would be interesting to note that this very controversial ingredient is on one ingredients list and not the other. So that's not really something that I'm gonna take away from them. I very much feel that the mica and talc differentiation is much more severe, I guess. Honestly, after dimethicone on the ingredients list, both lists tend to vary greatly in order of ingredients, but that's after the 9th, 10th on Sephora's website. There's a lot of differences, but it's in such small formulations, and I'm not a chemist, so I don't really know how they would affect a formula. I just want to point it out that it isn't really even like, this is moved here and this is moved here and this is gone. It's kind of is like a lot, and I just kind of feel like it's a little bit shady. Also, I say Sephora's ingredient list, but I checked on Ulta's website and they have the same ingredients list as Sephora, which again is like really interesting to me because why do they have the same ingredients list as the competitor as opposed to like the actual brand? I don't know. I just feel a little off by that, you know? So yeah, I just think there's a little bit of shadiness in the ingredients list, and I just, We'll see about the ingredients list whenever that product gets re-released because, spoiler alert, that product is being re-released. I just want to step aside here and ask that no one take this video as me kicking Becca when they're already down. I just think it's very interesting to see the evolution of a brand, especially one like Becca, who was known for their inclusivity in their early years, i.e. they wouldn't allow a store to carry the brand unless they carried the full entire foundation range, as opposed to picking and choosing, and to a brand that ended up just creating one fair light face palette in collaboration collections, especially in collections such as the Chrissy Teigen and Chloe and Malika collections. The Chloe and Malika collection being exceptionally a slap in the face, as Malika is a woman of color. She didn't use this. She didn't use these. I know I'm making fun of these again, but these were exceptionally bad. Highlighting and bronzing balls in one shade and one undertone. Oh God. The only thing not available in more than one shade or one undertone in the Becca and Malika collaboration were the lipsticks. And I was supposed to be like wrapping up this disclaimer of how I'm not making fun of Becca, but I just kept researching and I just kept getting more and more mad because of how lost it feels Becca became as a brand. Okay, so after writing this point in the script, some news came. The news came that Smashbox has purchased the rights to a couple of Becca's products. So far, all that has been announced to stay are the under eye concealers and the shimmering skin perfector in Just Champagne Pop. But Smashbox is extending the shade range of the under eye concealers from just a light and light medium to include, I think, 4 extra shades. So there's gonna be 6 shades in total. I'm a little confused, but whatever. But yeah, as of recording, it's just gonna be those 2 products. So 4 to 6 shades of concealer and Just Champagne Pop. And I think that announcement alone can really sum up why Becca is shutting down. Fundamentally, the brand put inclusivity before profits at a time where inclusivity wasn't even profitable or at the forefront of the beauty industry. At such a luxury price point and with little brand recognition outside of professional makeup artists, teaming up with one of the biggest beauty influencers at the time, and even still really to this day, was a genius move on Becca's part to really introduce them to the average everyday consumer. But in that process, they made that collaboration product as synonymous with their brand as it was with that influencer. Making Champagne Pop an integral part of Becca without Jaclyn Hill's face behind it was kind of seen as backstabby and betrayal to a lot of her fans, and making it from originally limited edition to entire collections and then even more collections and then permanent with even more collections brought the ire of fans because it brought them to the face of the, as previously stated, what is limited edition argument. And that's not really the best place to be. In an effort to recapture the magic of the first Jaclyn Hill collaboration, collaborations just kept coming, but without the diversity and inclusivity that the brand was once proud of, in an age where diversity and inclusivity are at the forefront of the makeup community. We are at an age in the makeup community where brands are being lauded for being inclusive and also criticized for not being inclusive, no matter the size of the brand. We've seen brands like Tarte with their Shape Tape foundation that ended up having to be discontinued after they only had like 2 or 3 darker shades for people and said that they'd be releasing more darker shades in summer when Black people exist every day of the year. To Nikita Dragon and her small brand, whenever she came out with her one color corrector that only really worked for like light medium skin tones and was too dark or not dark enough for others, and then in her next launch, I believe, only came out with 2 face palettes that only worked for fair or light to medium skin tones. I'm not going to say that those brands received an equal amount of backlash because Tarte's PR for that was awful, but I say that to say no brand is given a pass due to size. The fact that Smashbox had to expand one of Becca's best and most loved face products from 2 shades to 6, while also only buying Champagne Pop, the most popular highlight that arguably only works for a very limited number of skin tones, just because of how integral Champagne Pop is to the Becca brand, kind of summarizes everything that has happened to Becca throughout the years. As relevancy faded, Becca held on to bestsellers and well-known products while prioritizing collaborations with influential people to generate capital. Whether that capital would have been used to expand these shade ranges in the future, I can't say. But what I can say is that Becca became lost as a brand. And as much as Becca wants to blame COVID, it was more or less the nail in the coffin for a brand that had wavering public interest in the recent years. I wish Smashbox all the best with Becca products, and I extend that same sentiment to every Becca rep I've worked with in my entire career who are now without a job. I hope everyone involved will inevitably move on to bigger and better things. Just because Becca as the brand failed does not mean that you, the worker or the person behind Becca, failed. As important as numbers are for any industry as well as the beauty industry, you not pushing that highlight or pushing that lipstick wasn't the downfall of Becca. And I really hope that no one is really taking this to heart. That's one of the little guys that isn't a big player, you know? I thought this would be a good like foray into brand comedy because at the beginning of this, it seemed like an open and shut story with Becca opening and closing. But the story got a little more difficult as time went on, and I feel like if I were to be looking at this like a book, this Smashbox would be the epilogue. I don't think anything new is coming. I think it's just another brand trying to increase their profits on the backpack of this failed brand's best known products. It can be painted any way we want as like, oh, we're doing this for you. Oh, we're doing this because we just love products and we're just gonna miss these products. When actuality, it's Smashbox saw an opportunity to increase their profits, and they did. If you want me to be completely honest, the video's over. The important part of this video is over, but if you just want like my little opinion on something, I honestly thought that Jaclyn Hill was gonna buy the Champagne Pop like IP. I thought like the copyright, I thought that was gonna happen because imagine if Jaclyn Hill Cosmetics had the rights to the Champagne Pop name. I think people would buy it on principle. I think that would have been a great move on her part. I don't know if she's just not interested and wanted to separate herself from that part of the business, which I completely understand. But ultimately, this is where we're at right now. And thank you all so much for watching. I know this is probably going to be a very long video. I have been recording for 59 minutes and 19 seconds, so I am hot. But don't forget to like and subscribe. I love you all, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.